Hello children, welcome back to another history chapter of mine. In my last history chapter, I took you to France where we came across the French Revolution and how the people decided to bring down the monarchy and have the power in their hands. Today, I'm going to take you to another country, Russia, where also the people have decided to bring down the monarchy and have the power in their hands. Let's see how they did this. Children, there was a famous quote, when France sneezes, the whole Europe catches cold. And this was said by the famous Duke of Austria. And this is very much true. When the turmoil took place in France in the 17th and 18th century, the other European countries also decided to follow, and Russia was no exception. And this led to the Russian Revolution and the birth of socialism in Russia. Children, this chapter is divided into two parts, part 1 and part 2. In part 1 video, we are going to look into the social changes that took place in Europe in general. Then we are going to have an insight about the different revolutions like the Industrial Revolution, Russian Revolution, Revolution of 1905. Then we are going to look how the First World War affected Russia. And the last one for this video will be the February Revolution. So shall we begin? Children, the French Revolution opened up the possibility of creating a dramatic change in the way in which society was structured. People all over Europe and Asia started discussing new ideas about individual rights and who should control the social power. This led to the birth of different groups like the liberals, the radicals, and the conservatives. Who were the liberals? What were the principles of the radicals? And what were the beliefs of the conservatives? Well, children, let's look at them one by one. The liberals believed in religious tolerance. Number 2, they were against dynastic power. Number 3, they wanted to safeguard the rights of individuals against the government. Number 4, they wanted a representative parliamentary form of government, but they were against the principle of universal adult franchise. The radicals, on the other side, wanted a government based on the majority of the country's population. The radicals supported women suffragette movement. The radicals wanted to end the privileges of the rich landlords and the factory owners. The radicals were not against private properties. The conservatives opposed both the liberals and the radicals. They believed in the privilege enjoyed by the nobles and the wealthy class. They believed that the past should be respected and the changes in society should be made gradually. The coming up of industrialization led to a rapid change in the society. People started migrating from the village to the town in search of bright future. But unfortunately, there were not many industries in the town. There were very, very few industries, and these industries were completely employed. This led to a lot of hardship to those people who had migrated from the village to the town in search of a bright future. Even the situation of the workers working in the factory was not very good. They had to work for long hours and they were paid very, very little wages. Many industries were properties of individuals, and the liberals and radicals themselves often owned such industries. The liberals and the radicals believed that if the freedom of the individual was ensured, and if poor could labor, and those with capital could operate without any limits, the society will develop. For this, many nationalists wanted the end of monarchy rule and a rule led by the people of the country. One of the visions as how society should be structured was socialism. Socialists was against private properties and they saw it as a root cause of all social evils. Socialists believed that if the properties were owned by the individuals, only few of them will be benefited and not the society as a whole. They said if the society as a whole has to be benefited, then the property should be controlled and owned by the government of that country. This led to different visions which was put forward by different socialists, such as Robert Owens, who was an English manufacturer and who sought to build a cooperative community called a New Harmony in Indiana. Louis Blanc also supported the idea of a cooperative society but said that this should be controlled by the government and not by the hands of the individual. Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels did not agree to the idea of Louis Blanc or Robert Owens. They had a totally different idea. Marx argued that industrial society was a capitalist and the only way to free the workers from this capital exploitation was to construct a radical socialist society where all the properties were socially controlled. This would be a communist society. With the coming up of the Russian Socialist Democratic Party and the Socialist Revolutionary Party, socialism began in Russia. The Russian Socialist Democratic Party was started in the year 1898. It followed the principle of Karl Marx. It concentrated in the town and gave more importance to industrialization. The Socialist Revolutionary Party, on the other hand, fought for the peasants' right, demanded that the land belonging to the noble should be transferred to the peasants. The Russian Socialist Democratic Party was further divided into two, the Bolsheviks, which was led by Lenin, and Mensheviks, which was led by Martov. The Bolsheviks believed the party should be disciplined and should control the number and the quality of its members, whereas Mensheviks thought the party should be open to all. Now let's look into Russia and what was the causes that led to Russian Revolution. Russia was ruled by Tsar Nicholas II. About 85% of the population were farmers and who was involved in agricultural activities. Industries were there, but in very few numbers. They were located in St. Petersburg and Moscow. The working conditions of the workers in the industry was very pathetic. They had to work for 15 hours for very low wages. The workers formed union and declared strike whenever they felt the condition was deteriorating. Now let's look into the countryside. Many of the lands in Russia was owned by the nobles and the church. The Russian peasants had no respect for the nobles and they wanted the land back from the nobles into their hands. With the coming up of the two socialist organizations, the Russian Socialist Democratic Workers' Party and the Socialist Revolutionary Party, the people of Russia decided to revolt against the king and get the country back into their hands so that they could live a better life. This automatically led to the first revolution called the Revolution of 1905. Revolution of 1905. What were the reasons that led to this revolution, children? Number one, like I told in the beginning, the people of Russia was not happy with the rule of the Tsar. Number two, the price of bread rose and wages reduced. Number three, the working conditions of the workers in the factory was pathetic. They wanted a reduction in the working hours and increase in the wages. So the workers decided to put this across to the king. So they started a procession and they marched towards the Winter Palace where the king was living that time. This procession was led by Father Gapson. When the workers reached the Winter Palace, the army mistook it as if they were coming to attack the king. The army started firing at the workers. Nearly 100 workers died and 300 was injured. This incident was called Bloody Sunday. Bloody Sunday marked the beginning of the strike in the city with students, lawyers, doctors, engineers staging a walkout, complaining about the lack of civil liberty. Under such circumstances, the Tsar allowed the creation of an elected parliament called Duma, but this parliament was under his control. The Tsar dismissed the first Duma within 75 days and re-elected the second Duma within 3 months. He did not want any questioning of his authority or any reduction in his power. He changed the voting law and packed the third Duma with conservatives only. The liberals and the revolutionaries were kept out of Duma in the third round. The First World War broke out in the year 1914 and it lasted for 4 years, that is up to 1980. The war was between two European allies, the Central Powers, that is Germany, Austria and Turkey, and the elite power, that is British, France and Russia. Initially, the people of Russia supported the Tsar. As the war progressed, the Tsar refused to consult the Duma. During the war, anti-German slogans ran very high. Initially, Russia was winning the war, but later on, Russian army suffered a great setback in the hands of the German and the Austrian army. Initially, Russia was winning the war, but slowly by slowly, it lost to Germany and the Germans got control of the Baltic Sea. And because of this, the country was cut off from other suppliers of industrial goods. Industrial equipment disintegrated more rapidly in Russia than anywhere else in Europe. In 1916, railway lines began to break down. All young men was called for the war. As a result, there was a labor shortage and workshops producing essential goods had to be shut down. Large grains were supplied to the army to feed the soldiers. For the people in the city, bread and flour became scarce. By the winter of 1916, riots at the bread shop was common. The February Revolution of 1917. The winters of 1917, the condition in the capital city Petrograd was grim. The layout of the city seems to emphasize the division among the people. On the right-hand side of River Neva, we could see the workers' quarters and factories. On the left-hand side of River Neva, there was the Winter Palace, the official buildings including Duma. An acute food shortage broke out in February 1917. The condition of the workers deteriorated. So the workers decided to go on strike to put forward their demands and meet their demands. So on 22nd February, a strike took place at the factories on the right side of Neva. The many workers joined the strike, including women. That is why 22nd February is called the International Women's Day. The government imposed curfew
and all the workers had to go back. On 25th February, the government dissolved the Duma or suspended the Duma. This made the demonstrators very angry and they came out on streets on the 26th of February. On 27th of February, the workers ransacked the police headquarters. The government had to bring in the army or the cavalries to bring the situation under control. But the armies or the cavalries did not listen to the government and they joined hands with the striking workers. By the evening, the soldiers and the striking workers had gathered to form a Soviet or a council in the same building as Duma met. And children, this was called Petrograd Soviet. The very next day, the Tsar ran away from Russia. The Soviet leaders and the Duma leaders formed a provisional government to run the country. Russia's future would be decided on a constitutional assembly elected on the basis of universal adult franchise. Petrograd had led the February Revolution that brought down the monarchy in February 1917.
Well, children, we have completed part 1 of this chapter. I hope all the concepts are very clear to you now and you have felt this chapter to be very easy one. I will be back again with part 2 of this chapter. Till then, bye.